President Trump announced Friday that the U.S. would be lifting steel and aluminum tariffs on Canada and Mexico, ending a simmering trade dispute.
We've just reached an agreement with Canada and Mexico, and we'll be selling our product into those countries without the imposition of tariffs.
The president also said his increase on tariffs on Chinese products and China's retaliatory tariffs was worth it. Mr. Trump acknowledged these tariffs have had a negative effect on farmers, but he called them patriots and said he has never heard a complaint. Let's bring in Joel Payne and Michael Graham. Joel is a Democratic strategist, former Hillary for America senior aide, and a vice president at MWWPR. He is in Washington. And Michael is a CBSN political contributor, conservative columnist for the Boston Herald, and politics editor at Inside Sources. He joins us from Boston. Good to have you both with us.
To be with you.
So, Michael, let's start with you. The Trump administration this week announced a new immigration proposal, and next week plans to meet again with lawmakers on infrastructure. Why make all this domestic news now? Is any of it going to be part of the president's 2020 campaign strategy?
It may be part of the campaign strategy to show I'm trying to do stuff, but nothing's going to actually happen. Let's just get that right out front. There is no way the House, controlled by Democrats, is going to pass anything of any substance before the election. So all of these actions, all these, like the new Jared Kushner put together immigration proposals, should be looked at as campaign documents. It gives President Trump something to go out and talk about other than just stop, build the wall. It also has go. Here are the kind of immigrants that we'd like to have coming to the United States. We want to use a system similar to Canada, et cetera, et cetera.
President Trump is also denying reports that there's infighting in his administration about Iran. He called the stories, quote, BS. Michael, we've seen these kind of infighting stories before, but because of the seriousness of this with Iran, do they carry more weight, do you think?
I mean, infighting in White House, I mean, that's been in the stamper for a newspaper since, 1789. Washington, Adams, at it again, I mean, that's just part of life. I will say that the smart people I've talked to, and I'm not one of them, but they talk to me, say that Iran is working hard on a strategy of their own and also allies of the old Iran deal that Trump threw out. They want to drive a wedge between National Security Advisor John Bolton and President Trump as a matter of internal politics because, the argument goes, the sanction regime is really working. It's really hurting Iran. And so they need something to shake this loose. And so talk of war, possibility of war, et cetera, that would be a strategic advantage for Iran. And so having this story of division in the White House, is something that they're hoping to talk up, which is, by the way, why the Iranian ambassador to the UN was literally talking about it on national TV earlier today.
President Trump also talked about his plans for infrastructure in an interview with Fox News. I want to listen to some of that.
Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, we're going to get together, do a big infrastructure plan. But very soon after that, you had Mick Mulvaney, your chief of staff, saying, no, it's not going to happen. Do you still want that big infrastructure plan?
If Mick Mulvaney said that, then he has no right to say that. He tells me he didn't say that and he didn't mean it. He said it's going to be hard to finance. We put $7 trillion into the Middle East.
So you still want that big infrastructure?
I do, but I also think we're being played by the Democrats a little bit. I think what they want me to do is say, well, what we'll do is raise taxes, and we'll do this or this or this. And then they'll have a news conference. See, Trump wants to raise taxes. So it's a little bit of a game.
So, Joel, what do you think? Is it a game for Democrats like the president says, or do you think they really want to work with him on infrastructure?
I think any patriot who's tried to drive over a bridge or who's, seen crumbling infrastructure all over our country knows that an infrastructure bill is dreadfully needed. So the desire is there for Democrats and Republicans to work together on it. But the question is, will Trump's base actually let him do it? And by base, I'm talking about Mick Mulvaney. And I thought that was very interesting because Mick Mulvaney, I saw that in print, that he said that they would not be able to pay for this bill. And the fact that the president kind of had to publicly rebuke him there, he can try to, but what Mick Mulvaney actually stands in for is those establishment Republicans who let Trump get away with everything else, right? They let him get away with saying crazy things about immigrants, saying all these kind of impolitic things, but they don't want him to mess with their money. And they don't want him to mess with their spending and all the sacred cows of Republican politics. So I thought that was very interesting that that's where the president is going to have this quarrel with his chief of staff, who is really a stand-in for the Republican establishment. He is, as Bob Corker said, the adult babysitter in the White House who's there to make sure that the president doesn't wander too far off the reservation.
And switching gears to 2020, Joe Biden is holding a campaign rally in Philadelphia Saturday. President Trump is holding his own rally in northeastern Pennsylvania on Monday. Michael, who is that state more important to at this point, Biden or the president?
Well, it's hard to see a path for either of those two candidates for president that doesn't include Pennsylvania. Is it doable? Yes, it's doable. But man, what a vital state to both of them. And Ohio has, despite all the talk about bellwether, it's been inching towards a Republican state. I think Joel would agree over the past 2 or 3 cycles. I think the real action is going to be Pennsylvania. The poll out this week showing that Biden has a 10-point plus lead there in a theoretical matchup is not good news for the White House. And so you're going to see a lot of Donald Trump in Pennsylvania.
In fact, a new national poll from Fox News shows Joe Biden still leading the pack of 2020 Democratic candidates with 35% of support from Democratic primary voters. Bernie Sanders has 17% and Elizabeth Warren has 9%. Biden has gained 4 percentage points since March, and Elizabeth Warren has gained 5. Sanders has dropped 6 points. Joel, what do you think is behind all this shifting in these numbers?
So look, and I hope Michael would agree with me. Part of it is it's May. These things are going to move around, right? Someone's going to spend a couple weeks in Iowa. Someone's going to spend a couple weeks in New Hampshire. People are going to get interviews. Beto O'Rourke has been doing a new national rollout over the last 10 days. So I wouldn't be surprised the next round of polling numbers you see that he's going to have a spike in his poll numbers. These attitudes really, I don't think, are going to really start to set in until after the debates start and when we get into kind of the early to mid-fall, when, by the way, some of these 23-odd Democratic contenders, they're going to have to drop out because the money's going to dry up and there's going to be pressure to start to consolidate different parts of the party. You're going to have people like Cory Booker, Christian Gillibrand, Amy Klobuchar, on and on and on, who are not necessarily getting the traction that they need to be viable, who are going to start to feel pressure to coalesce support around, whether it's a Joe Biden's or whether it's a Beto O'Rourke or a Kamala Harris. You're going to start to feel that. For right now, Biden, Sanders, they are the two kind of 800-pound gorillas in the room because they're the most well-known folks in the field, and they're going to continue to lead for the time being until there's something that really changes the math of the race.
And back over to you, Michael. You actually have a new opinion piece on BostonHerald.com. You write that Biden's campaign, quote, plans to run as though he's already the nominee and facing Trump in the general election. Some people see this as a sign of Biden's strength. You write, it's not. Why not?
Because if he has to run a traditional campaign where you get down in the trenches and you battle it out state by state, whatever, that's going to be tough. I will say, and Joel, I love you, buddy, and I'm not trying to be negative about anybody on your side of the aisle, but I saw him at an event in New Hampshire this week, and Joe Biden's age was a thing. And it was a thing in a way that it's not for, say, Bernie Sanders. I talked to longtime Democratic strategist Bob Shrum, and he said, Bernie's just been Bernie for forever. And that's kind of, Bernie, you see Bernie, you see Bernie. Joe Biden's age is going to be an issue in this campaign, whether that's fair or unfair. And right now, the idea that he would be able to duke it out with the Buttigiegs and the Warrens, from debate to debate, that does not look realistic to me.
Michael, now I gotta respond there. And I've said this before to you, and I'll say it again. Joe Biden and Donald Trump could have gone to high school together. Literally. They're the same age. And if you're going to hit Joe Biden for looking a little slow out the starting gates, then you're going to have to hit the president for being wrong about everything and for forgetting people's names and for not exactly sounding like the most put together 72-year-old himself.
Well, look, I think that's a good example, by the way. When you see Donald Trump, his age is not one of the first things that comes out. Crazy, whatever. There's a lot of words.
But it should be.
But that's my point. Is it's not.
Yeah.
And with Biden, it just is. And is it fair? It's like the complaint that Kristen Gillibrand makes about how women candidates get viewed differently from male candidates. She's right.
I think there's a generational point that you're right about, Michael. You're totally right. There's a generational point that someone like Buttigieg is well positioned to say, hey, listen, they're fighting the fights from 20, 30 years ago. I'm turning the page. I think that applies not only to Biden, but to Sanders and to Trump. But to kind of stand Biden out on his own, that doesn't kind of pass the smell test for me.
All right, we'll end this conversation and this week the same way we always do. For both of you, the same question: who in the 2020 field is having a big week and who is having a bad week? Michael, let's start with you.
The big week is for Senator Gillibrand and the other women in the race because of the new abortion restriction laws in Alabama, Missouri, and Georgia. It has really fired them up. It fires up their base, and it's going to help them certainly in the next few weeks. I predict you'll see some movement there. The bad week, Beto O'Rourke. I used to run campaigns for a living. The two words I never wanted to hear come out of my candidate's mouth: ear hair. I'm sorry, I'll leave it there.
All right, Joel, what about you?
I can't top that. So, but I'll try to. Okay, so Bill de Blasio, and Michael, you gave me a tip that there was a New Hampshire event where there were 20 people for Bill de Blasio a couple weeks back. So off the face, you might say he's having the bad week, but I'd say he's having a big week. And here's why. He was in a very public spat with Donald Trump. There are probably 10 to 20 million people who now know his name. And for progressives who are looking for someone who's going to be a fighter, de Blasio came out the gates fighting with a nickname for the president and with a strong progressive agenda that, by the way, he can boast for actually completing. He actually presents kind of an interesting progressive case. Am I predicting that Bill de Blasio is going to be a Final Five guy or going to be someone that can really contend for the nomination? We'll see. But he's got a claim to be in the field just as much as any other progressive. And I think he actually, on balance, had a pretty strong rollout. For my candidates who did not have a great week, I picked Pete Buttigieg. And listen, you know, these things are shades of gray. I think Buttigieg is still very viable. But a number that I saw in a recent South Carolina poll showed that he had 0% of the African-American vote. He cannot be viable in this Democratic field without strong support from African-Americans. I know the Buttigieg camp is working on it, but if he continues to have those types of problems, he is not going to get beyond the third or fourth place in the polls that you see him right now. That's going to be where he tops off. He's got to figure out a way to break through and to kind of create a more diverse narrative for the electorate.
All right, we will leave it there. Joel Payne and Michael Graham, good to see you both and have you with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.